All right, today I was going to talk to you about the Beggar, but instead I'm just going to let Crypto do all the work for me on that.
I see what you did there. Story pun for the win. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
All right, welcome to the CodeX Cantina, where I am Una.
And I'm doing all the heavy lifting, Crypto.
Now, you can read for free. We are going to put a link to read this story for free in the description box below.
And this story was a short story that was completed in 1887, translated from Russian by Constance Garnett.
And written by?
Anton Chekhov. Did I say it right?
I don't know. It sounds right to me. We're terrible with names, so if we mispronounce names, we apologize. We are doing our best as we explore this Russian literature. Let's talk about this author, because he was a peasant family-born individual. Anton Chekhov went to school and studied medicine at Moscow University, graduated in 1884, and he helped support his family by grinding out short stories for a newspaper publication.
And today he's one of the most recognized and supported important authors of plays and short stories ever, which is incredible.
And I can see why, because this story is, we're going to talk about it from a character perspective and kind of understand this, but I imagine we're going to bring something unique with what makes this story literary, because just because someone's giving or is merciful doesn't mean your story survives 100 plus years. And this one did, so we got to talk about why that is today.
I want to start off with a quote that I really thought was cool from the story, and it says, "Work. I know that myself, but where can I get work?"
Yeah, and I like that because we have like the self-righteous lawyer, right, that thinks that he's doing the saving, only to find out later that it was the cook, Olga.
Yeah, it was kind of cool to see that it doesn't really matter work in the story, sort of, and that's an interesting take on it.
Well, we're going to get more into that. I have some questions for you, Crypto, as a history professional. We're going to jump through some important things that I think were happening at this point in time to talk about this.
We're going to do a little Russian history, right?
So for plot, a drunken panhandler, and I apologize for the names, I'm going to say Lushkov, appears at the door of Skvortsov, a St. Petersburg lawyer. However, the lawyer recognizes him and calls him out for being a lying beggar, coaxing people out of their money. He tells him that he should instead perform honest work. The beggar says he lacks the training to become a shopman, the class background to become a house porter, and the skills to work in the trade. He would chop wood, he says, but nobody's hiring. So the lawyer offers him the job, takes him home, and his cook, Olga, takes him to the back to show him how to chop some wood, but she ain't too nice with him, is she?
No, she is very, very mean and stern. More on that later.
Now, the lawyer is watching this from his window, and he sees Olga scold the beggar and throws an axe in front of him, and then he kind of walks off before watching him actually perform the work, right? And after an hour, the cook comes in and announces that the wood has been chopped, and that the lawyer pays the beggar and offers him a monthly job of chopping wood for him, right? So the lawyer kind of performs odd jobs for a while. Let's time skip 2 years later. The lawyer runs into the beggar at a ticket booth at a theater with a quinky dink. The beggar is earning money as a notary now. And we have the quote, "You know, in a way, you are my godson. It was I who shoved you into the right way. Do you remember what a scolding I gave you, eh?" And the beggar tells him, "But it was your cook, Olga, who really saved me."
That's got to burn.
You remember Metal Gear Solid, like that sound effect?
Yeah.
The beggar then explains it was Olga who did all the wood chopping and rebuked him for this drinking and warned him he'd burn in hell for the actions, so he set his life on the straight path from there on out.
Yeah. Good twist there. Good twist.
Great twist, and I think just from a straight inspectional enjoyment perspective, let's talk about this from that perspective to begin with for our analysis. So the opening line, "Kind sir, be so good as to notice a poor, hungry man." What'd you think of this line?
So I guess I took this as he's saying, "Hey, I'm hungry. Are you going to help a fellow person out?"
Do you see your fellow man right here? And there's those 3-day references, right, in terms of being reborn. He says he was the victim of false witness, and doesn't the story almost end with a false narrative of what happened to make him turn good, interestingly enough, too?
It's kind of cool how you're thinking one thing the whole story, and then the twist gets you, and you're thinking, wow, the whole story was almost a lie.
Yeah, and he calls that out in the opening lines here with him being a false witness. I love that. Now, in this story, we're over the lawyer's shoulder.
Yeah, is it third person?
It's third person, and I would argue, I think limited. I have to go back and check, but I would argue limited because I think that he's the only over the shoulder that we get. But we're watching a man look down on another individual, and we're in Russia, who's not contributing to his country, which is got a much different cultural experience there with what you ought to be giving to your country, right?
Yeah, here everybody's supposed to be contributing together to help one another out.
Yeah, and I think the religious angle is interesting when you look at this, because my dad was raised me Catholic. He's a very Catholic individual, and he does take very personally the wanting to love your neighbor and help your neighbor. He actually does give to panhandlers. I know, I remember a very specific day he told me that he's a consultant, so when he was traveling 2 weeks in a row, the guy that asked him the week before, like, hey, I'm looking for money, I'm trying to get to Houston, that he gave money to, comes up to him and tells him the exact same story, that, hey, I'm looking for money, I'm trying to get to Houston. My dad's like, you just told me that you were trying to get to Houston last week. And the guy's like, come on, man, I'm just trying to make a buck. But those are people. That is real. People experience that, where people are trying to take advantage of the charity of others, and this lawyer very directly calls him out for that.
Yeah, and then he tries to proceed to saying, well, he has this internal conflict and says, well, I'm a good person, so I'm going to help you out in a different way than just giving you money.
The beggar, due to his alcoholism, is no longer able to work and has to resort to begging, right? He says, it's my last choice. But when given the work,
he still doesn't do the work.
We have this quote, but simply from shame and amour propre, because he has been taken at his word. So he's doing this out of self-respect. Okay, he's not doing this for the money. He's doing it because it's the respectful thing to do, because that's what he said he would do.
My word is my bond type idea.
Well, in taking that religious angle further, I know we always reference this, but Genesis 3:19, by the sweat of your brow will you have food to eat until you return to the ground from which you were made. For you were made from dust, and to dust you will return. So by given this opportunity, right, we're expecting that through hard work, you will see reform. You will see the light of how to move your life forward, right? These 3 days, a chance at rebirth, right? Because Christ had 3 days in order to be reborn. This man was begging for 3 days. You see the chance now for him to be reborn and to work by the sweat of his brow to bring food to his table.
Yeah, but he wasn't. And I think that's important to note, that if you look at it from a religious angle, is you can't work to get yourself into heaven. You have to have someone else do it for you. And that someone being Jesus in Christianity.
Let's move to the reform. So let's talk about it from Olga's perspective, because the lawyer views himself as saving him because he's giving him the chance for hard work, the chance at saving himself, of contributing back to society. Olga, however, does the work for him. How did you take that from a reform perspective?
So I thought that she was trying to save him by showing him instead of just telling him what to do, because he might not know how to do these things. So kind of from my personal experience as like a teacher, you can't just say, hey, do it this way to a student or someone that doesn't have that information or that ability. You have to show them. And then, maybe she took pity on him as, he wasn't able to do this, very physical, demanding, laborious task.
Would you say, it's a cliche line, but actions speak louder than words is relevant here?
Yeah, that's probably kind of the main thing, is that one guy is saying one thing, the lawyer is saying, if you do this, you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps and have a better life and help Mother Russia. And then Olga's saying, here, let me show you how to do this to help you better yourself and other people.
Would you say that her doing the work is a form of mercy or compassion?
I would definitely say it's a form of compassion.
So you would say that the mercy and the giving is what brings about real change, not the demand for it, but the actual actions of it, and wanting to almost... Would you say it's peer pressure for why he wants to contribute as well? Because he does turn around, right? He stops drinking. He becomes a notary, right? He does eventually start doing the work himself, but it started out with Olga getting him there, right?
Yeah. It could be, we don't know exactly. It could be guilt. He feels bad, like, this lady did all this hard work for me, and I'm going to repay her by doing what she told me I should do.
Well, we're not there yet with Russia, with communism, with the peer pressure of we all pitch in. But the Communist Manifesto is written at this point in time. We are moving towards that of where does work and an individual's responsibility lay in relation to other individuals in the community too. That's coming up at this point in time.
Yeah, we're getting to a point where Russia is going to have a revolution soon, and that that idea is manifesting and it's festering, I think, in the souls of the Russian people at the time, of this idea of one for all or all for one type mentality.
So just from a straight character perspective, to kind of wrap it up, we do have the actions speak louder than words, that helping is a form of mercy and can lead to reform, as opposed to the demand or request of it or instructions of reform, actions versus instructions. I think that's kind of like a very easy way to take this from an inspectional read perspective. We're slowly right now talking about the social and political reforms happening in Russia, moving towards more of the literary perspective of why did this story survive 150 years? There's more to it than just mercy and actions speak louder than words, right? So what just happened in 1861, my history buff crypto?
Serfdom has been abolished and the people are free. Woo!
Kind of, right? What do we have happening, not just in Russia, but worldwide in terms of, I'm going to give you a hint, labor.
So during the late 19th century, we will see the second industrial revolution. We will see the urbanization of the world. We will see worldwide trade networks start to begin and populations increase dramatically. The first megalopolis cities being born across the planet.
Okay, A+ for you, obviously. You know your stuff here. Now, this was written in 1887.
So about, 25 years after this all kind of started taking place.
Well, and not long after the assassination of Alexander II, who was bringing about liberalism, and people did not like that. He was assassinated by the people's will, I believe it was. And Alexander III is elected several years before the elected. In terms of tsardom, Alexander III kind of takes over and starts a counter-reform to a lot of the liberalist movements that were happening before. So we have a lot of questions within the people about work too at this point in time, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there was a lot of financial issues with Russia at this time as well, because they were behind because they'd all been serfs and farmers, and now they're struggling to get people to invest because they have no industries.
So what I would argue is, in terms of what makes this story literary, is this story is written about labor and responsibility right at this ideal and critical time in Russian history. So there's lots of questions about what is the government versus the employer's responsibility at this point in time. Fair statement?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So the lawyer demands for his workers to be hard workers, and he pays based on results. What does that sound like to you?
Sounds like capitalism.
It sounds like self-made man, individual ownership of the machinery, right?
Yeah.
Right, and we have Olga, who shows him how to be a better worker, which is the idea of
food stamps.
Well, governmental assistance.
Yeah,
right?
Socialism.
The idea of being given something without direct repayment, but instead raising the ocean, if you will, instead of having a few waves of individuals being more powerful, trying to raise the entire ocean of individuals to each contribute in their own unique way.
We see this in many countries during this time period as well, where they're being very reluctant to enter into the Industrial Revolution and use machinery because they're fearful of it, and they are pushing out this agenda to all of the workers. Hey, you need to work harder, or we're going to replace you with these machines. And it is something that's being driven into people's psyche through all the countries across the world at this time period of work hard, or else.
Right. And you have the two different views presented from the lawyer and Olga here that match up perfectly with that. So we also have to bring up, unfortunately, it's a stereotype that's true. You can read about it if you don't believe me, but the Russian alcoholic.
They love vodka.
Well, and you can even read the stats in terms of 1 in 5 suffering from alcoholism and stuff. This is a real thing. It's not made up. But we have an interesting tale of work ethic and rewards at the same time that alcoholism is very prevalent in this country, and our beggar suffers from alcoholism, and how does he overcome it?
Through hard work.
Well, I would argue he found something that brought value in his life, right? When he first met the lawyer, no one will give me work, right? I don't have those skills. No one will let me do that job, is what he says. There's a couple of class arguments put in terms of I wasn't raised as a tradesman. It takes years to develop that. I can't do that sort of thing. There's a couple commentaries in there from that perspective. He finds value eventually, not necessarily in being a woodcutter, right? Because he moves on from being a woodcutter. Technically, Olga was the woodcutter, but he found value in contributing and giving back and giving up alcohol and becoming a notary for Russia at that point in time. So you see he found value, and that's what allowed him to overcome the alcoholism and the work ethic question that's being raised in this story.
I would also say that sometimes people just need a little bit of help, and Olga helped him when he was at his most dire, and he was able to turn his life around, and that sometimes you can't do it all on your own. And if Olga represents, governmental assistance, sometimes when you're down on your luck, you just need a little bit of help to turn things around.
So whether you view it as governmental assistance or whether you view it as compassion, religion being something that helps people, there's a lot of different ways to take this story. And I think that's why it has become a literary masterpiece as opposed to it just being a actions speak louder than words parable, if you will.
Well, I think that this is a lesson that everybody has to learn, or you would hope everybody would learn at some point in their life, from both's perspective, as the beggar and the lawyer and Olga, right? Because that's kind of the person we all maybe want to be, as Olga. Nobody wants to be the beggar or the lawyer.
Yeah, I'll take being the lawyer. I'll take that. I'll watch from the window. Yeah.
You're a terrible person.
All right, let's move into our subjective ratings of this. So we've had a good breakdown here, I feel like, talking about the literary aspects of kind of like the governmental assistance versus bootstrapped approach. Let's do a subjective and then also the analytical rating for our ratings today.
So on this one, I would say that I would give this a solid 8 for both. I really, really love this story. It pulls you in very quick for being such a short story. Was it 6 pages or something? And then you really feel for the beggar, and you already immediately have this kind of disdain for the lawyer, and you're interested in Olga, but you don't get to know much about her. And then you get to the end of the story, and you're like, he made it. That's really great. That's pretty awesome. And you're like, wait, what? Olga did all the work. Oh, hot damn. This is crazy. So from all around, I really enjoyed it. Anytime we get to go into this Russian stuff, we love the history of it. I think you're going to get a lot out in terms of world history, Russian history, serfdom, class history. There's so much richness to these stories that can be pulled out. All around, solid 8. Let's keep going back, man. We need to buy plane tickets and go to Russia.
No, I'm really enjoying this stuff. I'm going to go with a solid 8.5 on both ends, just in terms of how much I enjoyed it and the analytical side of things. I agree. I imagine that there's going to be those people out that are just like, man, that guy was really lazy and he got to get through this. It's like, pull up a chair. Let's talk about this. There's a lot of depth into this. And once you look into the history, like you just said, that it's going to bring out some elements that it rewards intellectual effort into the story, right?
Yeah. Well, I would say if somebody said that, does that say more about them of which persona they are? Or does that say that they are the lawyer? I'm not trying to offend anybody out there. Please don't please don't get mad.
Can I sign up for the food stamp program? Because
interesting.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good question. Okay. Well, we are not psychologists, but we are judgmental, so.
Oh, totally. I judge everybody.
If you guys enjoy literature discussions like we do today, we like to go into the history and more of the literary and symbolic backgrounds of these stories. Please consider subscribing for joining us on this journey and checking out more stories like that. Una out.
Peace.